All right, so we're here for our Lay Leader 101, serving effectively as our church lay leader. I am glad to see so many folks here. I know that I recognize some names, so I know that we've got some folks that have been lay leaders in their church for at least one cycle, and I'm looking forward to, I know that they'll be able to also maybe add some commentary about from their experiences for those who maybe this is their first time in doing in serving in that role. Again, I want to take a moment, and I'm going to ask you, as I'm going over some background information, to let us know that you're here. And hopefully the way that this will work is I am going to put into the chat a link to a Google form where if things go according to plan, if you could click that form, and it should be asking you to enter in your name and your email address and that you use to register, and then what your primary role is at your church, primary leadership role. This is designed for lay leaders, and so we do hope that we have a lot of lay leaders here, but we know that we may have some clergy who have joined us this evening to listen in, or we may have, you may be listening in to hear about the lay leader role because the role that you have in your church is not something where the session is this evening. So we're glad to have you regardless, but we just would love to see why you're here. So if you have the opportunity, if you can click on the forms link and then just provide your information and click submit, we will capture that and provide that then back to our planning team so they'll have information as to who was here tonight. Okay, so we're going to go through this evening a little bit of information about understanding your role as the lay leader, how to effectively serve your church. We're going to share some helpful resources, and then I want to have some time for question and answers and just kind of wrap up that we will have together. We're scheduled to go to 9 o'clock. I don't anticipate that we necessarily will go that long, but unless we have a lot of questions. I'm glad to stay that long, but I know that you guys have probably had long days, so we want to provide you the information that you'll find helpful, and but if we're not here that long, then that's okay too. This evening I am happy to share facilitation duties with my partner, Caroline Wood. Caroline is our Catawba Valley District Vitality Associate, our specialist, and she's also our conference liaison for lay ministries. And so she is going to be helping me by calling me if we've got questions and we need to stop and that I don't see something, if someone has raised their hand. She also will be helping to monitor the chat and can jump in if there are questions in the chat that we need to pause and discuss here. If not, she can hopefully respond to you directly in the chat as well. So Caroline, thank you for being here, and thanks as always for your partnership.
I can't find the form.
If you will try to, I put in the link again, and I will now as well. And if you just click that link, it should take you straight to it. Thank you, John. It is always fun and a pleasure to be in ministry with you and to host events and gatherings and Zooms. So I'm glad you're here, everybody. Thank
you. I also want to take a moment to introduce to you our district lay leaders. Now, some of them had other commitments this evening for other sessions, but we wanted to, I wanted to at least get their names out. And if they are here, I'm going to invite them to unmute themselves and say hello to you as I call them out, so that you maybe can see them and put a name to a voice and to a face. So we're just going to go alphabetically by district. Is Penny Ledbetter with us this evening?
Yes, I am.
Hey, Penny, thank you for joining us.
I've been looking forward to it. My name is Penny Ledbetter. I attend Union Grove United Methodist Church, and I serve as your Appalachian District Lay Leader.
Thank you. Is Judy Chandler with us? I didn't think she was going to be. Judy is our new district lay leader in the Blue Ridge district. She is traveling, and I wasn't sure that she was going to get back this evening, but she is doing a great job in the Blue Ridge district for us, and we look forward to continuing to work with her. How about Gordon Hubble from Catawba Valley? Gordon, I think you're muted. The miracles of technology. All right, Gordon, we're going to come back to you. We'll let you do. We'll look for you in just a minute. How about Loretta Howes? Is Loretta on the line with us this evening?
Okay, I've got it.
Now you got it. Go for it, Gordon.
All right. Things disappear magically some days, and I just saw it magically reappear. Gordon Hubble. I'm from my home church is First United Methodist Church of Lincolnton, and I'm the fairly new appointed lay leader for the Catawba Valley Conference.
Thank you very much, Gordon. We appreciate you being here this evening. And let me just ask again, I don't know, I don't think Loretta was going to be able to be on the line with us this evening, but let me just check. Okay. Loretta Howes is our Metro District lay leader. How about Kim Eller? Okay. Kim is our Northern Piedmont District lay leader, and many of you probably know Kim. She's held a variety of leadership roles across our conference, does a great job in promoting and encouraging the work of the laity in the Northern Piedmont District. Patty Graham, or Patty, are you on with us this evening? Okay. Patty is again relatively new as our Smoky Mountain District district lay leader. She is doing a lot. She's a certified lay minister, as is Gordon, and is doing a lot of work and helping working with Caroline in particular around a lot of our curriculum development work for our certified lay minister and certified lay ministry areas. Is Kathy Odell with us? Okay. Kathy is our Uwharrie district lay leader, and some of you also may know Kathy. She for many years was also a member of our conference staff, and so she is supporting the work there in the Uwharrie district. And how about Tim Hoffman?
I'm here.
There he is.
Yeah.
Good to see you, Tim.
Thank you. Good to see you. Tim Hoffman, Yadkin Valley District lay leader. Anxious to try to help equip laity wherever you are, Yadkin Valley or elsewhere.
That's great. Thank you. So, so you see on your screen, there is a link there, and we can also put that in the chat. And I should tell you that I will provide you access to this deck via your email address. So we'll be able to send that out to you after the call. But there is, just wanted you to know that if you go to our conference website, the complete contact information for our entire conference board of laity, including your district lay leader, is available on our conference website. And as you heard Tim say, they are very open to hearing from you, answering questions, and they are your primary contact for you in your church in terms of information that's going on in your district, and by extension, information that's going on in our conference. So I do encourage you to connect with them, make sure that they have your contact information, and reach out to them if there's any way that you need some help. You also can always contact your district office, and your district office can provide you their contact information as well. So now we'd like to see a little bit about you guys. I am going to ask Caroline if you can launch the first poll, and we're going to ask you to respond to some questions. First is we want to tell us about yourself. Tell us which district is your church located. So you should be seeing a poll. If you could just select your district. Like about half have selected their district. So if you haven't had a chance to chime in, we invite you to do that.
James Wright from Catawba Valley,
Thank you, James. We appreciate that.
Hartselle United Methodist Church.
Dorothy Lackey, St. Paul United Methodist Church, Catawba Valley District.
Thank you.
Patricia Townsend, Northern Piedmont District, Memorial United Methodist Church, High Point.
Thank you. Some of our folks are joining by phone this evening, and so they may not be able to see the poll. So that's all right. So Caroline, if we take a look then, if you may not have seen it, if you scroll down on the poll, there is a second question that says, how long have you served as lay leader in your church? And we can, and we'd ask folks to answer that question. And then some information about what the average attendance is across all of the services that are offered at your particular church, whether it's online, multiple services in person, and those kind of things. It looks like I'll just give another few seconds for folks that may want to finish up the poll.
I missed the second question, John. Where can I get it back some way? I don't know. I hit
I
submit.
didn't see the second question come in.
This is that
I didn't either. This is, I didn't see the second question.
that's fine. It was all written as just one bit. It's one. I didn't have it as separate questions. You had to kind of scroll down, and I apologize. Some folks may not have done that, but that's fine. We just wanted to get kind of a flavor for who we had in the room this evening. And we'll go ahead and end that poll. And we can share the results. So are you guys able to see the polls at this point? So and again, some folks are not able to do the polls or may
No,
not
I'm
have
not.
it.
No.
Yeah, that's fine. And so it looks like we've got a good cross-reference, good representation from all the districts this evening. And we then, for those that were able to see the other questions, we have about 40% of us that are new to the role of lay leader. Another 20% that have been in the role 1 to 2 years, and then a good number have you been in the role for more than 2 years. And I know some of you that's been in the role for well more than 2 years, and I thank you for that as well. And then we do have some folks who are not yet the lay leader of the church. All right, thank you. If you guys can just make sure that you stay muted, that'll help us create the background noise. And then in terms of our poll, the piece here around where the size of the churches, we have some smaller churches. As expected, we have the majority of folks that were able to respond are between 25 and 100 people in attendance, and then a few folks that are there from some of our largest churches. So we do have a good cross representation on the call this evening. And I thank you for taking the time to share with us what you have as you have. Okay. All right. So are we back? Can you guys see my PowerPoint presentation? Yes. All right.
Yes.
Yes.
So we want to first just talk about understanding the role of the lay leader. And so you're maybe sitting there, and particularly if you're new or relatively new to the role, you may be saying, okay, I've been asked to be the lay leader. And now what does that mean? And what is my role? So first, I would say congratulations. The fact that you've been asked to serve as the lay leader for the church means that you are someone that your pastor and your committee on lay leadership determined was someone who had the respect of your congregation, that you're knowledgeable about your congregation, that you can be trusted to provide wise counsel, and that you've got the relationships and the wisdom to effectively represent the voice of laity in your church. The reality of this is that as the lay leader, you are the primary representative of the laity in your church, and you're a key leader in helping to build an understanding and appreciation for the role of laity in the life and ministry of your church. Now, this evening, we're going to talk about some different ways that you can do that. If you are interested and want to kind of look at it directly, if you have access to a copy of the Book of Discipline, or you look at the Book of Discipline online, I think paragraph 251 speaks specifically to what are the duties of the local church lay leader. But we're not going to focus just on what the Book of Discipline says. We want to kind of think about what does it really mean to do what the Book of Discipline says. And so as we think about it, I think if you can just make sure that you're muted, that would be great. So I think there's three main responsibilities that a local church lay leader has. The biggest responsibility, and the one where we're going to spend the majority of our time this evening, is talking about what it means to partner effectively with your pastor in defining, communicating, and implementing the church's mission and vision. Then we also, as local church lay leader, would say that you have a responsibility to be the link between your congregation and our broader United Methodist connectional system. And then finally, the third area that is your kind of core responsibility is celebrating and encouraging the ministry of the laity in all the ways that they serve, whether that's in the church or beyond the church. So those are the three areas that we're going to focus on this evening, but again, glad to take specific questions. One of the things that I think is important for us to acknowledge up front is that we have a lot of different churches in terms of their needs and their size. And sometimes the role that you play as a local church lay leader is very specific to what your church needs. As an example, we now have some churches that have chosen to take the role of local church lay leader, and maybe they've split it. So they may have co-lay leaders, two or more that are performing that role. And they may have found that to be effective for them because there's a lot going on, and it was just, more than what one person could effectively handle. We also have some churches where the role of the lay leader is to partner very closely with the pastor, particularly around worship leadership. If you are in a smaller congregation, particularly one, maybe you're on a 2-point or 3-point charge, and the pastor has to transition between church services. Sometimes the local church lay leader might be the person who's kind of the worship leader and takes care of helping to conduct the worship service up to the point that the pastor is able to arrive. So what we would share throughout this is, I want to share with you some things that I think make a local church lay leader effective. But what this really is designed to be is kind of a framework for you to have a conversation with your particular pastor about what you need to do and how you can be of the biggest help to him or her in furthering the ministry of your church. And it won't look the same for all of us. So let's start with being a partner. And so we're going to focus on the kind of the acronym of what it means to be a partner, in particular with your pastor, but also with the other folks in your church. So when you think about partnering effectively with your pastor, that is going to be done in primarily two ways. One is being a strong collaborative partner with your pastor. And then the other is being a key resource on various committees or ministry teams. So if we look at that, to begin with, we're going to kind of use this acrostic of partner. And the first thing I would suggest is that we want to be prayerful. So as a local church lay leader, you want to be in regular prayer for your pastor and with your pastor for your church. We want to make sure that we're always grounding the work that we do in what God would have us do, which makes sense. And we would ask that, as you're thinking about your role in supporting the pastor, that you do that prayerfully and figure out what are the best ways that you can support the pastor in your church, given your local ministry context. And then when we look at the next step, it's a matter of being available. Now, as the lay leader in your church, there is a lot of committee memberships that by default you are going to be a part of. And it's important that you do your best to participate in those so that you can have influence, but you also, beyond just the availability of attending the meetings, is being available with your on a regular basis with your pastor to have ongoing conversation. One recommendation, if you aren't doing it already, might be to speak with your pastor about a regular time that you could meet with him or her to connect one-on-one. That doesn't have to be at the church. It could be, out for lunch, or you meet for a cup of coffee. But you want to make sure that you're making sure that the pastor knows that you're available as a resource to answer questions, to provide input, and to provide counsel as situations in the church develop, and as you're as an ongoing partner in the ministry. The third part here is relational. So one of the key things that we've talked about is that you are, as the lay leader, you're the link between the congregation and the pastor. Now, you will have a pastor parish relations committee, or maybe a staff parish relations committee. They certainly have a role to play, and as lay leader, you serve on that. But the other key here is helping folks understand and connect in and support the work that the pastor is doing, and helping them to stay connected to our broader system. And we'll talk more about that, but being the liaison from your church to our district level and to the conference level. The T is trustworthy. So being in partnership with your pastor means that you are someone that he or she can trust to, one, hold information confidential that needs to be held confidentially. Two, that they can trust you to be honest, to be fair, and to share feedback with them when they're asking for that, or when you think that there's information that they need to hear, even if they aren't asking for it. And that can be sometimes a challenging situation, which is why it's so important to be prayerful and available and relational, to build that relationship before you're in a difficult conversation. The N in our partner acrostic stands for neutral, and that can be very difficult to maintain sometimes, because you, of course, have a perspective as lay leader. Your congregation is going to come to you with things, and there are going to be times where you're going to need to help the pastor communicate things to the congregation. There's going to be times where you're going to need to share feedback from the congregation with the pastor. There may be times where the pastor asks for your help in addressing something that's going on that's a conflict within the congregation, particularly, within the leadership team. It's important throughout that process that you are showing up as being someone who is engaged and is interested, but is neutral, that you can, that folks know that they can come to you with their concerns or their suggestions, and you're not automatically just going to discount it, or likewise that you're not always going to, no pastor wants to have a lay leader who they feel like is always taking the side of the congregation, or no congregation wants a person who feels like they're, the lay leader is always just being another spokesperson for the pastor. This can be one of the more challenging areas in your role, but it is critical for you to do that in order to kind of maintain that trustworthiness from all sides. Encouraging is another important aspect, and this is one of those that we sometimes can overlook. As lay leader, you are in a unique position to be a voice of encouragement to your pastor. You can help work with your pastor parish or staff parish relations committee in finding ways for the congregation to show appreciation for the pastor. You can be a source of celebration, helping to celebrate major events in the life of the pastor, and making sure that the congregation is made aware of those things. But you also are going to need to be sometimes encouraging from the laity perspective. We're going to talk more about that. You want to be encouraging in terms of working with your pastor to find new ways, encouraging the pastor to find new ways to engage the laity in the life of the church. And then finally, we've got to be realistic. This is obviously a key leadership role, and it's very important. And there's potentially a lot of things that you would like to do, but you're not going to be able to do everything, or not everything all at one time. And so part of the role of the lay leader in working with the pastor is helping the pastor to prayerfully prioritize those things that are the most important for the church to be doing at this point in the church's life cycle. There's certainly other things that you could include there. Let me pause for just a minute and invite you into the conversation. As you, particularly those of you who have been in the role of lay leader, are there other things that you think are important around building an effective partnership with the pastor in your church? And I'd invite you to either put those into the chat if you'd like to do that, or if you have a comment, feel free to come off mute and share that with us.
Hi, this is Gerald Hamilton from Mount Pleasant United Methodist Church, one of the pastor, and I think one thing we need to do is to just recognize people when they have special events, laity, like birthdays, anniversaries, things of that sort, to make them feel important and feel like they're part of the puzzle. Because that also encourages stronger relationships and recognize important events in their lives. I think we need to recognize those events.
No, that's great. Yeah, great comment. Thank you for sharing.
This is John Rodney Willis also mentioned consistency.
Thank you, Rodney. That's all. Yes. Consistency in showing up. That's great. Susan, I think you had a comment.
Yes, I was going to say that one of the things that you do in this relational situation is that you have to be flexible enough to respond to the pastors as they are able and with their gifts. Some of them are not going to want you to have as much a role in some of these, where you need to step back and let them do things, or but just be willing to be very flexible with your pastor in that relationship, because everyone has gifts and talents and, delightful things that are different and rare things and you need to be able to be flexible to work with that.
Thank you, Susan. That's a great counsel. I think particularly in situations where either you're dealing with a new pastor, if you've got a new pastor in your church who has either just joined or maybe has recently joined and doesn't know everyone, there's certain things that they come into that new pastorate with a mindset about, this is the way the lay leader did things at the church I used to be at. Now, that might have been a really good relationship, or maybe it wasn't. And so, part of what we're encouraging lay leaders to do is to be intentional about having the conversation. And even if your pastor's been there a while, if you're new to this role, feel free to ask your pastor to have a conversation with you about what are the things you need me to do. Of course, they will say, well, you need to be on this committee and these other kinds of things, but find out, do they need you to be more helpful in worship, or do they need you to be focused more in providing them feedback? The key is, as Susan was saying for us, to be flexible and understand that the relationship, just like you may have served as lay leader at your church under a different pastor, and it what you did for that pastor may not be exactly what is most effective with your new pastor. So we really encourage this to be kind of a model of conversation, and developing a covenant between the lay leader and the pastor, so that each party knows what they can depend upon, what they need, and how they can most effectively work together.
And,
John, one of the comments in the chat is also around communication being key. And so I just want to make sure and bring that out, because that's exactly what you're talking about.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the comment.
Brother Wright from Hartsville, loyalty. You got to have loyalty towards your pastor, and that just simply means you got to have constant support.
Thank you. Yes, yes. I think for me, I think you capture in loyalty that aspect of what I would say is that relational and trustworthy. It's if you're going to provide feedback to me, I want to know that you have my best interest at heart, that you're interested in me as a person, and you're also interested in our work together for the church. And to me, the combination of being relational and being trustworthy means that, I don't interpret, and I don't think you're saying, James, that loyalty means you're not able to speak with accountability. It's just them knowing that that you are on their side, that you want them to do well, and that you want to be a good partner with them.
Exactly.
Yes, thank you.
Eric mentions creative decision making. And Eric, if you would type a little more in the chat and let us know just a little, if you can talk more about that, that'd be great. Tactful. Yes, somebody mentioned that means being tactful with each other.
Yes. This is our primary call as a local church lay leader, is really that building that effective pastoral partnership. And it can really be a blessing for both folks. And then, if it doesn't go well, it can be a tough situation. So I would encourage you to have the conversation with your pastor, be intentional about things, asking questions like, what role do you need me to play in worship leadership or worship planning? How frequently would you like for us to meet? Do you want to set up a regular time that we meet, or do we need to just make a commitment that we will find, 1 hour a month or 1 hour every other month that we will get together. Having the opportunity to kind of build those expectations into your relationship means that you're more likely to find it being a fruitful partnership.
I have a question.
Yes.
Do you guys probably have way more experience about this than me, but what are some ways we could support them? Like for my pastor says oftentimes he's just tired. COVID wore everybody out and they had to work 5 times as hard. And so what are some things we could do for him that would help him be recharged?
I have some ideas, but before I jump in, let me just ask others that are in the class what other ways have you been intentional about supporting your pastor, particularly during this, this period that's been so challenging for all of us with COVID and other kinds of just ongoing things that we've been having to deal with over the last 2 to 3 years.
Susan, I noticed your hand up. Do you want to share?
That was my question. I wanted to ask a question.
Oh,
Okay.
This is Dorothy Lackey.
Yes, Dorothy, go right ahead.
I've been in the role for about 7 years. I was lay leader under a different pastor before the pastor we have a retired pastor, and he did get COVID. And what I did was offer him the point of just relaxing and taking his time to get well. When he felt like he should get on back, I told him that I had prepared a message for 2 Sundays prior to the time he said he needed extra. And that I had a worship leader to help me, had contacted someone, they agreed, and I had things in place. So he was able to relax and get over his illness. And I did that because I felt like him not being there as long as the pastor prior to may felt a little intimidated that he may need to get back. Not that he was trying to let us dictate, but I felt like he would push harder to come back before he was ready. So long story short, I think that it's a good lay leader will recognize the needs of the pastor and understand the situation with the congregation. And if your relationship is very well, which I think my relationship is good with both, that you can actually do this and give the person time and yourself time to really pull it together. And when he did get back, he was well and ready.
Thank you, Dorothy. Appreciate you sharing it. Kathy Ward, I see your hand up. Go right ahead.
She basically said a lot of what I was going to say. If you really have a close relationship and you're attending the meetings and the staff meetings with them, you should know when your pastor is really, really tired. I mean, you should see that. You should hear it. You should know about their families if they have small children. So what I say is, you know that I'm here. If you need that day off, I will cover for you from the beginning to the end. Take it. And so normally they would come back and say, can you do this day or this Sunday? And also if there's a meeting that they're doing, and if you hear them say, oh, I've got a Bible class tonight and I really wanted to attend my child's game at school, I can do that. Go to the game. Let me do that. You just step up and offer that. And don't expect them to come to you because they won't all the time. Sometimes they will, but not all the time. You have to put forth and say, let me do that for you. And you go spend that time with your child. It makes the biggest difference in the world.
Thank you very much, Kathy. Penny, I think I saw you getting in. Penny Ledbetter, did you have some ideas that you'd like to share?
In our church, we have a lay shepherd program, and different members of the congregation have maybe 3 or maybe 4 families that they try to stay in contact with. And the lay shepherd, like I'm a lay shepherd, but I'm also on somebody else's list. So, you're not, everybody's covered. And that way, it's a way to communicate with people in the church, and we can get back to the pastor with important information and go do visitations and, go see people in the hospital for him or her. And in this case, we've had a male pastor, but that helps a lot to have those webs out there. And that way the pastor doesn't feel like, our pastor doesn't feel like he's got to be in touch with everybody all the time to figure out what's going on. There's a network out there that takes a huge burden off the pastor.
Thank you, Penny. That's great. A couple other things, Susan, I would just say that maybe falls in line with that, with what you've already heard. Really it's about understanding what does your pastor find relaxing and encouraging him or her to make that time and take that time, particularly in situations where maybe, you're at a church where you've got a senior pastor and but not a lot of additional staff who can help with things. Sometimes we find that it's really difficult. I mean, we do have a conference policy that sets standards for vacation time. One of the things that lay leaders can do is to be intentional about having a conversation with the pastor about when they're planning to take vacation, and helping them get that scheduled. Now, emergencies can come up, but if there's ways that you can encourage your pastor to say, look, on your days off, disconnect. Don't it's okay. Don't check email. Don't, you'll be there if there's an emergency, of course, but helping them and being a voice with your congregation to say, hey, our pastor's day off is Mondays and Fridays. And so, if you have an urgent need, reach out to them. But if if this is something that can wait, maybe wait with it, and try to do that. And then the thing that Penny had mentioned also about engaging others to be a support, so that I understand when someone is sick and in the hospital, or they've got family that's sick, the pastor wants to be there. They want to be informed of that, but they can't always be the person who is is being expected to go to the hospital or to visit with the family on an every week basis kind of things. And so working with the leadership in your church and others who feel particularly called to this kind of shepherding ministry can be a great way to create resources who can support the work of the pastor, allowing them to still engage and shepherd the congregation, but not feel like they have to shoulder the burden alone. Does that help, Susan?
It does. Those are great suggestions. Thanks for the concrete ideas.
Thank you. Okay, well, let's talk a little bit then about some really kind of specific areas where you as a lay leader have some accountabilities based on the Book of Discipline. And so there's 4 committees in your church that you're going to need to work as part of. Now, some of our churches have now gone to kind of a single governing board, so this doesn't have exactly the same look and feel for everyone. But regardless of whether it's done as a separate committee or you're serving on a single governing board that has kind of this broader responsibilities, these are the areas that a lay leader, just by the nature of your role, is going to be engaged in. You are going to be a member of your charge conference. When you have that, you may have some specific duties to do in your charge conference. That's something you'll want to check on with your pastor. But whatever is the governing body of your church, whether that's a church council, an administrative council, whatever you call it, you're going to be on that team. You're going to be a member of the pastor parish or staff parish relations committee. You're a member of finance, and you're going to be on the committee on nominations and leadership development, which is the group in your church that helps to encourage, promote the growth of and engage other folks in leadership roles. And so what I wanted to do was talk a little bit about how, as the local church lay leader, some different ways that you can add value in these different situations. So let's talk a little bit about each of these committees. In your work on the church council, some ways that you can add value as a local church lay leader. You can help to promote an integrated view of the church's ministries. You know, sometimes we have a lot of great ideas, but we all seem to be kind of doing our own ministries, and they aren't really connected as a church. So we lose kind of the focus on our mission or what's most important for us to be focused on, because we've got so many other things going on. And you can also be a great partner in helping your church council identify and understand the needs of the church and of your community. There are a lot of resources that are available through our conference that can help you understand your community demographically, economically, and in terms of their needs. But you also are, you know, connected to your community. You know what's going on. You know what's happening in the schools, and you know what's happening in the neighborhoods, and you can help the pastor and the church understand that connection. In your work with your pastor parish or your staff parish relations team, one thing that you can do is to bring a focus on the church mission, and in partnership with your chairperson, help provide an understanding of the finance needs related to staffing. So your staff parish relations chairperson also sits on finance by the nature of their role. You're also sitting on finance. Together, you can help craft what are the financial needs related to our staff's staffing plans and the staff budget, and help communicate that to finance. And similarly, you can be a touch point back to that committee from whatever is happening in finance. What are the concerns of the church relative to stewardship and or you know, church financial situation. And then we just talked about this. If you're on the, you know, as your work as a lay leader on the staff parish relations, please encourage the pastor to pursue health and wholeness, work-life balance, taking the time off that they need, whether that's just their regular vacation or frankly, just making sure they are being intentional about taking off days each week, so that they're not always on call. They're not always feeling like they can't disconnect from the life of the church. On finance, as the lay leader, you're asked to model an attitude of generosity and to help to find creative ways to connect generosity with the church's mission. And we want to bring a focus on the church mission and partnership with the chairperson for the SBRC, so that there's an understanding of those needs, like we talked about for staffing. And then finally, as you think about nominations and leadership development, you know, particularly if you got a new pastor, they're going to need your help as well as the committee's help in understanding the gifts and graces that are present in your congregation. And so what are the skills and spiritual gifts that are needed for particular ministry roles in the church? And then, you know, help provide to the pastor information about the interests, the skills, the experience, the callings of other church members, how they've served in leadership roles, when someone might be able to move into a new leadership role, so that they aren't, you know, trying to kind of guess as to whether or not someone would be good in a particular role. So there's probably other ways that you know of that you can add value through your role as lay leader, through your committee structure. And we also want to, as I started out with, you can also be asked to fulfill additional responsibilities based on your local church's needs. So for example, as we said, some churches, they need the local church, they need a lay leader to be part of their worship leadership program. In some churches, your lay leader will be the lay member to annual conference. Now, there's not a requirement that they be the same person, and some churches do not have them as the same person very intentionally. But you may be asked to serve in that way, and that's fine as well. And then, of course, there could be other committees or ministry teams that are important in the life of your church, where the pastor says, I really feel like we need lay leader participation in this. So depending on what's going on in the life of your church, there could be other things that you're asked to do. The key, and we'll kind of go back to it, is, you know, just discuss these additional expectations with your pastor and ensure that you're always kind of, you know, clear on your role. So as we think about these areas, I'd like to ask Caroline to go ahead and launch our next poll for us. I'd like to get your thoughts. Where do you think, as a lay leader, which of the committees that you see listed here, where do you think you would be able to offer the most influence in supporting the work of your church as lay leader? You should see a poll, and if you can just take a moment and respond. The results are coming in. I feel like the guys on election night.
Yeah.
Right. Give another 20 seconds or so for folks to cast their vote. All right. So Caroline, if you want to end the poll, and it looks like so there's some balance there. And a good portion of us, responded, I think I can be equally effective in all those, and that's great. Some felt like their role in church council or on staff or pastor parish relations was most important, some in nominations. It's interesting that no one particularly picked finance. There's probably something there that we can learn from about either the way our finance committees work, or maybe everybody's finance committee. That's what it is. I'm just going to assume that everybody's finance committee here works perfectly, that everybody has all the money coming in, their coffers are full, and there's never any issues relative to financial stewardship in your church. So don't be afraid to engage. I would just say, and maybe, again, a lot of us said equally, so I'm going to throw some finance folks in there as well. But I do hope that you will be open to partnering in that space as well. Okay, thank you. And thank you, Caroline, for handling the poll information for us. All right, so next we want to spend just a little bit of time talking about the second critical role. So remember, the first one was being a partner. Now we want to talk about being a connector. And as the lay leader, you are the link between your congregation and our broader United Methodist connectional system. Now, I will tell you, and the district lay leaders who are on here will probably echo this. One of the things that we hear when we ask for feedback from folks is about communication, making sure that communication happens. It happens regularly between, in other words, what's going on. We hate hearing that folks said, oh, I would have come to that training, or I would have participated in that study, or I wanted to do that. I just didn't know it was there. And so we are really dependent upon our lay leaders to help get the word out to your church. Now, the district will send a lot of communications to your pastor. And unfortunately, the district will send a lot of communications to your pastor because what that ends up meaning is they sometimes get overwhelmed with it. And they maybe miss something or it just doesn't, cross their radar screen to take action on it as quickly as perhaps would be beneficial. And so one of the ways that as a lay leader, you can help us is partnering with your district lay leader in this aspect in terms of building connections. That's why we wanted to make sure that you knew who your district lay leader was and encourage you to reach out to them via email or through your district office to make sure that they are able to get in touch with you and can share information with you. Email is a great way to do that. We know not everyone likes to email, but so much of what we have in terms of being able to push things to you easily now is through email. The other thing that if you are not doing it, please, 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 if your district has an email newsletter, please sign up to receive your district's email newsletter. If you don't know if your district has a newsletter, email your district lay leader, and he or she will tell you that and help you get signed up if there is one, or tell you other ways that information is shared. Similarly, our conference produces a conference e-news. For a good portion of the year, that comes out weekly. In some cases, like over the summer, sometimes it drops back to being every other week, but you can subscribe to that through our conference website so that you're always seeing information about things that are taking place across the conference. And we would ask you to be mindful about getting in front of your congregation in different ways, information about district and conference trainings, and encouraging them to participate. Now, some of you, maybe your church has a time where you do announcements on Sunday morning, and that's a good way to do it. Maybe putting information into your worship bulletin, maybe your church newsletter, whatever is most effective for you. We encourage you to use that and to do that. But help us get the word out, because there are really great resources, and we want to encourage folks in their growth as a disciple and in their service as servants in the church. I have a particular heart for lay servant ministry training. Lay servant ministry training. Some of you, if you've been in the Methodist Church a long time, you may be familiar with what that used to be called, which was called lay speaker training. And we don't call it that anymore. We haven't for almost a decade, because it's so much more than just people going through it who are interested in preaching. Lay servant ministry training focuses on leading and serving and communicating in all the ways that we do those things. If you are a lay leader, I would encourage you, if you are not already a certified lay servant, I would encourage you to contact your district lay leader to talk about how you can get involved in lay servant ministry training. It's a great opportunity for you to grow and to in your discipleship. It's a great way to model for your congregation the importance of this, and frankly, it's a good way for you to make connections for that fourth bullet point, to make connections with other United Methodist churches in your area, to build relationships with certified lay servants from their church or with their lay leader. Feel free to reach out, to talk to who's the lay leader at the churches that are in your neighborhood, in your area, in your city. Talk with them occasionally about what are ideas and things that they're doing, where there are opportunities for shared ministries in the community across the area. Let me pause and just see what other suggestions, particularly if I know I've got some district lay leaders on the phone. What other suggestions would you have for your local church lay leaders in how you would like to engage with them, or how they can engage in your district to be more connected?
John?
Yes,
this is Penny from Appalachian District. One of the things we're working on, we haven't gotten it completely there yet. Appalachian District has like 7 or 8 counties, and each one of those has a lady associate, and that individual has a list of the churches and things for the lay leaders. But we're still working on that process of the communication, but making sure that through some kind of communication from the district lay leader, that the churches in that county know who the other lay leaders are. I remember somebody a while ago mentioned they would like to know that information so they could get together for coffee or talk or whatever. And also invite your district lay leader to come and join the other churches in if the lay leaders are getting together, invite him or her to come be part of that. And if he or she doesn't know the answers to things, I'm sure we'll find out, we'll communicate that and try to get back to you. But that's one thing. And we also talked about praying for each other. Even if you don't have names, you can still pray for the other lay leaders and, ask for God's guidance and discernment and how to go about being the things we've already talked about this evening, in your role as lay leader in your church.
Thank you. Thank you, Penny. Any other thoughts on that?
John, this is Gordon. I have one rather broad one.
Okay.
Can feel, and I'm relatively new as being the district lay leader, a lot more familiar with church leadership, but sometimes you feel like you're operating in a vacuum. And that doesn't mean that you need a lot of feedback or that you want to spend tons of time soliciting information or anything of the sort. But it helps to know that there is an audience out there and to have people be responsive. I send out a lot of emails. I think other lay leaders do the same thing. And it can be a head scratcher when there's no reply. And even just a simple got it down at the bottom of the page, if you use a lot of the email programs will have that automated and they check that thing and send it back to us, just so we know that someone's listening. And it also makes kind of an informal poll of who have I not communicated with in a while. End of sermonette.
Thank you, Gordon. That's great. Yeah, communication definitely a two-way street. That's great. Well, let me share just a couple of other things we would ask you to do as a connector in your congregation. And this is important as part of the reason why we spoke about stewardship and finance. As the lay leader, in partnership with definitely with your pastor, obviously, but also in partnership with whomever is your stewardship chairperson or your finance chairperson, it's important that you help share and tell the story of the congregation about how we are collectively working together through the apportionment system at the district, the conference, and global level to further God's kingdom, and helping them understand how their contributions are being used and the great work that's being done as a result of their faithful giving is critical. I would also encourage you to work with your congregation to have the 6 special Sundays. You see them listed here. And these are special Sundays when we take up dedicated offerings or you can take up dedicated offerings to support global United Methodist missions. Many are familiar with UMCOR Sunday. Many are familiar with World Communion Sunday. That some of those, one of them used to be called like our Day of Giving. All these are great connectional ministries, and if it would make a huge difference if we just had our congregations donating $1 per member to each one of these things. And I'm going to share at the end a link to some information that you can follow up with. They have so many special resources now to help you make this easy. They've got articles that you can run in your newsletter. They have handouts that you can put in your bulletins, things that you can put on your social media pages. So I encourage you to work with your congregation to observe the 6 special Sundays. Okay. Last thing, be an encourager. And I think somebody, we talked about this at the beginning, recognize folks. And that's what this is going to be about. How do you, as a local church lay leader, recognize and celebrate the ministry of the laity in all the ways that they serve in both the church and beyond? So you've got a key role to play in thanking folks for their service, celebrating successes, helping them think about new ways to serve, and encouraging them to step into new roles, and helping them feel confident in doing that. some of the things that we can do is to provide opportunities for your members to learn about their spiritual gifts and how those gifts are useful for ministry. We do have some particular programs that are available through the districts, through our conference, that your pastor is aware of, that you can do a spiritual gifts inventory. And then use that information in how you think about deploying folks through your committee on nominations and lay leadership. Encourage members to share ideas for new ways, doing ministry in new ways. And I encourage you really to kind of think about and tell stories. Include articles and pictures of the way your congregation serves in your newsletter and on social media channels. And don't focus just on here's what we did, but what is the so what of that? How did their service make a difference? As conference lay leader, I think so I'm on Facebook and I try to follow the Facebook pages of as many of our Methodist churches as I possibly can. And I am always encouraged to see the things that they post around work that's being done in terms of food pantries and working with schools and people getting together to work at someone's home because they needed a ramp built. And they need, maybe to be able to make their home accessible because they've recently, become disabled. Not just the things that we're doing on Sunday or about teaching classes, certainly that's important, but all the ways that we're impacting our community. I encourage you to celebrate those things in your congregation and thank them for their willingness to serve both within your church and beyond. We also want to support the observance of laity focused Sundays. So we have, United Women in Faith. You have United Methodist Men's Sunday, Youth Sunday. A big one that we focus on is Laity Sunday. That is typically the third Sunday in October, but you can do it on a different day in your church if you would like to do that. We also, on a conference-wide basis, sponsor a Laity Service Award recognition program where folks are able to honor a particular individual or maybe a couple in your church who do work together. Again, that's normally done in the fall, but each one of our districts has their own timeline for that, and they send out communications to your church around how you can nominate someone from your church to receive a Laity Service Award recognition. They get a pin, a Laity Service Award pin. They get a certificate. Some of our districts do recognition events on their own where they have a laity rally where they invite those folks to come together. And so we certainly encourage all churches to participate in that and to recognize those who are making a difference in the life of your church and in your community. And then, as I said, with the lay servant ministry training, encourage folks that have, folks that go through that. You can get information from the district about who has graduated. Your pastor will definitely get information about who has graduated, and recognize them in a worship service. Say, hey, we want to, we just want to thank Sally for representing our church. She went to this lay servant ministry training and recently connected in with with folks from across our district to talk about, evangelism or whatever the course happened to be. Thank them for participating and make sure that you're recognizing them, particularly those who go to the step of becoming a certified lay servant or go beyond and pursue other training there. So our last poll would just like to get your thoughts about where you are. And so Caroline, I'll ask you to help folks launch the last poll. How well do you think your church is doing right now in celebrating the ministry of the laity? Are you doing a wonderful job? We do okay, but we could be better. Or maybe we're not doing it right. We're not doing it well right now, but I'm going to change that. The votes are coming in. How well do you think your church is doing? All right, we'll take another 15 seconds for folks to make their selection. All right. And Caroline, if you would please close the poll and just share our results. All right. So the good news is some of us feel like we're already doing a great job with that. We celebrate that. And then some have said, you know what? We're not doing this as great as we probably could be. We do an okay job, but we could be doing better, or we're going to get better on that. So I really appreciate your commitment to helping to celebrate the work of the laity in your church. I think you'll find that it makes a difference in the engagement. I think you'll find that it makes a difference in folks' willingness to try new things. And I hope that you'll be intentional about celebrating where you can the work of the laity, that, both within your church and beyond. Okay, so that is the primary information that we wanted to share this evening. As we wrap up, I just want to share a couple of resources with you. So there is a book that you can get. The paperback, I think, is only about $4. An electronic copy is about $7. It's called The Guidelines for Lay Leader and Lay Member. It's available via Cokesbury. So it outlines all of the responsibilities for the lay leader, and they're calling it's the lay member. What they're talking about is the lay member for your annual conference. So it's the person from your church who goes to annual conference on behalf of your church. We also, as we mentioned earlier, paragraph 251 is in the Book of Discipline. That is it outlines the specific duties of our lay leaders. And there is an online version of that is free that you can look at and search for information if you don't have your own copy of that, or if you, and obviously your pastor will have a copy of that. You can always connect in with him or her as well. And then just remember, your best source for our news, tools, and resources is our conference website, WNCCUMC.org. There's always good information out there. They've done a lot of work. If you haven't been out there in a while, they have done a lot of work in redesigning it, trying to make information easier to find, and providing more access to things without having to kind of dig through a lot of different sub menus. But there's a lot of information out there, and we encourage you to take a look at that. And then last but not least, I had the UMC Giving, umcgiving.org. You can go there and find all types of information about apportionments, about stewardship, about the special Sundays. There are a lot of resources that can help you and are what I would call camera ready. You can just download them and use them for your church with very little modification needed. So, all right. So that's it. So thank you. I want to just pause, and we are near our time. Are there any questions that you have that we did not cover this evening? And by we, I mean, it was me. So is there anything you would like to ask that we can be helpful in sharing with you?
John is not you did an excellent job. Thank you so much for your hard work and everything you presented tonight. One of the things that I would like to point out to our lay leaders, new or old, is the fact of Methodism and its itinerancy. One of the things that's so easily overlooked, our clergy is going to come and go. We are Methodists. We're itinerant. Admittedly, maybe not quite as quick as we used to be, but it's still going to happen sooner or later, probably. As the lay leader, you can represent the solidity of that church in that transition. And I just encourage all of the lay leaders and laity to be cognizant of that. And as that transition occurs, be there the solid rock to carry your congregation through. God still gave us free will. We're humans. Some of us like any clergy. Some of us don't particularly care for some clergy in different genders and race and et cetera, et cetera. I know that's a little harsh for me to come out, but it's really, if you look at your congregation, it's a fact. but be there to solidify that congregation as that happens and make that transition so that, that doesn't become a divisive part of the church's environment. So I just want to throw that in, but John, you did a heck of a job, buddy.
Thank you, Tim. I appreciate that. Thank you. Any other questions before we close out? My friends, I know this is a challenging time in the life of our church, but God is in control. And I want to just extend my thanks as your conference lay leader for all that you're doing, all that you have done, all that you will continue to do. We are here to partner with you and would encourage you to particularly connect in with your district lay leaders, your district superintendent, because they want to hear from you. They want to be in partnership with you, and they want to help you be and make your church be a place that is a mighty outpost for God's kingdom. And so I thank you very much for your willingness to be with me this evening, for your attention and for your contributions. And I'd ask you just to bow. We'll just take a quick moment of prayer as we close our time together. Father God, I thank you for this evening and for the leaders that you have brought into this session. I would ask, God, that you just continue to equip them and to strengthen them and to encourage them for the work that you have called them to do. Help them to be effective ministry partners for the clergy that you have called to their churches. Help them to be strong liaisons between the laity and their congregation and their pastor or pastors. And Lord, we just ask that you would continue to be with our churches, to work among us, to make it clear to us the areas that you are calling us to work in. We know, God, that you go before us, and that it doesn't really, our plans sometimes aren't the greatest, but you always, Lord, are working and moving. And when we are connected and are open to the guidance of your Spirit, then we can do great things for your kingdom. We thank you, Lord, for the opportunities that you place before us to make a difference, to be salt and light, to bring hope, to bring joy, to bring peace. And now, Lord, take us into this evening, grant us rest, and help us to go forward into this week as your servants among your people. It's in Christ's name that I pray. Amen.
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 Thank you all. Thank you, Caroline. We appreciate your partnership. Thank you. Have a nice evening.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, John. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Thanks, John. Good night.